The first time I came across the Wave Trust was in 2007. It wasn't long after I'd arrived here, and I received a direct approach from George Hoskin, who was looking for a local authority that was prepared to work with them on an integrated approach to early intervention. When I first came across the Wave Trust, I was quite intrigued because it's an unusual name, and I wasn't sure what they represented and what their real raison d'etre was. And as I read into their literature, I understood that they had this, compelling passion and drive around the importance of a good first few years in childhood to make sure the right development in terms of cognitive, emotional behaviours was in place. And I found that, as I say, very compelling. When the Wave Trust first introduced to me their core concept, which is that prevention is much more effective than later reaction intervention, I found it immediately to be just logical. And of course the reason why local authorities tend not to do that is because preventative services are discretionary and reactive services tend to be statutory. So the first things that get cut are the preventative services. But it's a false economy. You're far better actually maintaining and expanding your investment in preventative services, and you'll find you save money down the line in terms of your cost of your formal intervention. When I first read the seminal report, Violence and What to Do About It, I think the first thing that strikes you is that everything the Wave Trust says is backed up by evidence. They are absolutely committed to not just making loose propositions, but rather always to tie you back to the international longitudinal studies that have been done to show how these preventative actions have had a positive impact on children. And they're also very honest, so where the evidence doesn't give you the full answer, they don't try to pretend to enhance their case. They say this is a partial piece of research, it tells us something, but it may not be a complete solution. After I'd read the Wave report, Working Together to Reduce Serious Youth Violence, I actually took the step of circulating it to all my senior management team. And the reason I did that was because I thought it commanded the need for a change in mindset. That actually we've all been involved in providing statutory services for a very long time, and it requires a completely different approach to say, actually, if we switch money to earlier in life, towards the first 3 years, then we will save money 10 years down the line. The evidence shows us that, but it is still a step of faith because clearly for those 10 years you've still got to maintain that investment in those statutory services. So you're investing over a very long period, which doesn't often happen on the shorter political cycles that usually take preference. One of the things the Wave Trust emphasises is the quality of nurture that children receive in the first few years of their life. And this has really caused not just us, but actually all the partners in Croydon to reflect, including the Primary Care Trust, the hospital and other workers in the locality. Because if attachment and nurture is the principal reason why children develop empathy and good cognitive skills, then clearly we've got to make sure that as the local state we're doing the things that will inculcate those qualities. And of course that means good parenting, it means attention to things like breastfeeding in the early stages of a baby's life. It means that we want fathers more involved positively in those first few years of their children's lives. And we've been able to draw on the Wave Trust literature to give us some tools and strategies for helping families to achieve those nurturing qualities. One of the things that Wave emphasises, particularly in the first few months of life, is the importance of attunement, that crucial relationship building between particularly mother or primary carer and baby. And through our children's centres and Sure Starts, we've been able to work with targeted groups of families to actually develop those very core parenting skills which are so crucial in developing attachment and then empathy. One of the things that the Wave Trust also emphasises is the development of empathy within children, and the reason for this is because we know that children who develop empathy early are less predisposed to violence later in life because of common respect for their fellow human being. They feel what the other person feels before they enact violence against them, and therefore they're far less likely to do so. Developing empathy in early years is really about teaching good behaviours in response to situations where children are provoked. And obviously sibling relationships are a really good example of that. So again, we use our children's centres, our Sure Starts, our early years provision to inculcate some of those good qualities that parents can bring to their children in setting clear boundaries. I think one of the things that the Wave Trust has taught us over the last 3 years is that the emotional and cognitive development of the child in those first 3 years is absolutely critical to future outcomes. If we want to affect the level of youth offending, the level of teenage pregnancy, outcomes in terms of school attainment. All of those things are dependent on what happens in those first 3 years. At a physical level, in terms of the synaptic development of the brain, in terms of the development of emotional qualities such as empathy, it is absolutely critical that we get that cognitive and emotional development right. And there's only one set of people who can do that, and that's the parents or guardians of the child. We can support, we can enable, but it's about working with those parents to be great parents and to provide the child with those qualities. One of the things that the Wave Trust has emphasised really now for 5 years is the importance of a local authority and its partners adopting an integrated approach to the lives of very young children and their families. That it isn't good enough just for, say, the local authority to tackle this through its children's centres or the PCT to do it through health visitors, but rather you've got to join the whole thing up so that parents and the children are receiving an integrated package of support when they need it. Now, clearly it's not possible to do that for all children. In Croydon, we've got some 84,000 children and young people. So you also have to be very good from first scan stage onwards at identifying those families who may not cope with parenthood or may struggle to cope. And then you can ensure that the interventions that they need and the preventative strategies are in place from the time the child is born. There is no question that the Wave Trust have been very challenging in terms of helping us to understand the importance of early intervention and prevention. And I've used them across a number of away events and workshops to help my team to make that journey. And some have been more resistant than others, if we're being truthful. It is a hard ask when you're asking people to actually give up resources from statutory services in terms of intervention and move it to preventative sources. You're asking them to trust the evidence, to trust the approach and to reap the dividend in later years. But I think most of my senior team have come on that journey now, and the fact that we do have an integrated approach to early intervention and family support shows the influence the Wave Trust have had. One of the things that's been really good for us is having the Wave Trust there as a national organisation, as a source of advice. It means that when we're attempting new approaches or suggesting new initiatives, we can always test them with the Wave Trust, and they will tell us whether they've been carried out in another part of the world, whether there's any evidence as to whether they're successful or not, and also which other initiatives to best combine them with in terms of overall effect on the family and the children. And I really like having that sounding board there, that sort of trusted litmus test to be able to say to us, you know, John, actually maybe that's not the best thing to do, or actually yes, why not go for it, try that out, the evidence is backing you up. The impact of the Wave Trust over the last 3 to 4 years on our approach here in Croydon has been pretty profound. We've gone from a situation of really having no coordinated preventative strategy to having a proper integrated early intervention and family support approach that spans not just the local authority but actually other partners such as the PCT and hospital as well. And if it wasn't for the Wave Trust, we would never have been given the chance to be a pilot under the Total Place initiative run by the last government, which allowed us to actually develop a suite of new preventative approaches which we're now implementing within our community. And if it hadn't been for the Wave Trust, we wouldn't have been selected as a community budget pilot in terms of being able to pool resources to work with families in chaotic circumstances. So we owe them a debt of thanks. One thing that makes it really easy about working at Wave at local level is that you can always reference their credibility at national level, because they're well known to the current government, they worked with the previous government, and of course they're now involved with Graham Allen MP and Ian Duncan Smith MP on actual national policy on early intervention. So when I talk to my local politicians or local MPs about working with Wave, they already know who they are, they already know what they stand for and what they're trying to achieve, and therefore it gives me credibility in terms of introducing these policies locally. For a very small organisation, the Wave Trust consistently punch above their weight. They are very patient and very pragmatic, and they realise that for any local authority we're not going to be able to do all this at once, that we won't be able to tick every box that they would like us to tick. But they stick with us and they continue to commit to us and they chivvy us along, but they also resource us in terms of new evidence and new approaches. And I think it's their commitment to a long-term relationship that actually makes them a really good partner to work with.